it's Joyce Conroy. You were on the block party with me and award-winning creative director and designer Ernie Cefalu. This is Ernie's Corner. Ernie, it's really something because not only do I and the block party family learn all about the designs that you've done over the years with Pacific Eye and Ear, whether it was freelance or solo, but we also learn about bands that really were maybe the word is obscure, but they
Yeah,
made a contribution, and
yeah,
Buckwheat is one of them.
yeah. Joyce, I think it happens in a lot of industries, but it seems to be rampant in the music business because I guess there's so much competition, and I guess actors are a lot like that too. I mean, there's so much competition, and you may do an outstanding thing in a film that just really gets lost in the shuffle. That happened a lot in music, especially because we talked about this, about how the music industry was changing. Acts were just flocking to Los Angeles to be discovered. And the record companies that were, mainly in the East Coast are now represented on the West Coast. By 72, 73, they were already here. I mean, a lot of the independents like Camouflage and not Camouflage, but what's his name's Casablanca, Alive. A lot of those indies sort of popped up later, but the major companies were by 1972 they were out here, and it was. There was this, they would go to the Troubadour. The acts would beg to get a show at the Troubadour so that they could get discovered. I mean, and the guy, Doug Weston, who owned this Troubadour, was a very smart businessman. He would make acts sign a contract to get a show to all these record executives, because that's where they went. They would have to sign a contract saying that they would have to come back once a year for the same amount of money that he paid them for the first one for like 10 years. So he had people like Elton John and James Taylor, all these big stars, Carole King, and they all had to come back once a year for this 10 year at being paid the same amount, but now they're like mega superstars. So LA was really a melding pot and a boiling over bubbling pot. And Buckwheat was one of those bands that goes back a little bit further. There's this guy named Bill Levy. He was the creative director at Decca Records. He was friends with Bones Howe. Bones Howe was good with friends with Andy DiMartino, who produced this Buckwheat album and the second album. They only did two albums, and that was this one and Hot Tracks. So we were kind of connected. By 1972, we had started Pacific Pioneer, and the Decca account was really starting to give us a lot of work. Bill Levy was the main guy. We talked about this last week with Eric Satie. Those albums on London and some of the other companies that were distributed by Decca, really Bill was in charge of. So, he opened up a flow of work that was really amazing, and we had talked about him before in the past, and I love the guy. I miss him. But, we all have our moment in the sun, and the real trick um, is to always show up every day and get your moment in the sun. And when you stop showing up, then you start becoming history. And then history gets fogged over and rewritten. And, you sort of, Buckwheat was one of those kind of bands. They were amazing. Steve Lindell, and I don't know how much you know about him, but he was he was a vocalist, he was a guitar player, he was the main force behind Buckwheat and forming that band. And they were heavy into this Southern rock at a time when Southern rock was really starting to, go crazy, along with reggae. Reggae was really starting. By then, reggae was really starting to make a mark, and country, Southern rock was really, very much that same category. They were influenced and sounded a lot like Little Feat. I don't know how much you knew about Little Feat, but they were pretty amazing. And that rock sound, that country rock, and then there was the Allman Brothers, the Doobie Brothers, the Marshall Tucker Band. We worked with them a couple of times. It was an incredible, a kind of a real insurgence, and Buckwheat kind of got lost in that shuffle. You talked about it. There was a lot of great contributions that people made that just sort of went by the wayside and things moved on. Bigger band. And then when you try and do the next follow-up, oh, you sound a lot like the Allman Brothers, or you sound a lot like Little Feat. There's only room for one Little Feat. There's only room for one, Allman Brothers. So you have to fight every day when you're in the creative business, you fight every day. And I know that firsthand because, I mean, we were constantly on the prowl. We were constantly on the prowl to kill something that day so that we could put something on the table that night. And it was like that. It was very competitive, even though there weren't many other companies like us. We talked about this as well. The record companies were our major competitors. And in this case with Decca, because I had a history with Bill that went back to Jesus Christ Superstar and, my mentor, and we just became great friends and we socialized even after I left Norman Levitt and went to Craig Braun. He and his secretary Lydia would come over on the weekends and we'd party. I mean, he was just a great guy and just a wonderful individual. So anyway, Andy brought Steve Lindell over to Pacific Ioneer. Okay, because they were at Devonshire Sound in Hollywood. They were mixing it at Wally Heider. We were right there in proximity. Sunset Sound was right across the street from us in the crossroads of the world. So we were right in the heart of where these artists went and created their art. And because we were in that kind of location and such a different array of acts that we were doing work for, we were constantly meeting, Andy DiMartino, Joe Wissert, these different, Bob Ezrin. We were constantly in the studio environment, and so our name was always being placed around. We actually when we would go to hear a meet or hear some tracks and stuff, I would bring a stack of business cards. We had these business cards that were roach clips. It was an origami thing that I created that was this big piece, and part of it was the card, and then the other part of that below that was instructions how to put the roach clip together. And it was a carburetor. It was this thing so the other part was all die cut and stuff. And you could fold it up. You followed the directions and you folded it up into like a carburetor. It was like this. It had a hole in the back and it clamped down on the roach that you could put in there because everybody was smoking pot all the time and they would use like matchbook covers. They roll them up and make a little crutch out of it, what they call the crutch. Well, this was a more sophisticated way. You folded it up and what do you got in a recording studio more than anything? You got dead time where you're waiting around it's like on a movie set. You spend more time just waiting around than actually being on set or being in studio on recording. So thinking about that, understanding that environment, and I got to think I know this is kind of like a sidetrack from what we're talking about, but it's a part of it because when I went to see them, at Devonshire Sound, I brought, as I always do, a stack of these roach clip business cards, and I left them on the table. And they have these rec rooms, and I'd leave a stack here and a stack there, and they loved it. They absolutely, in fact, there were a couple times, especially at Sunset Sound, they asked us, "Hey, we ran out of those. Can you bring some more back? Everybody loves them." So it was really because and what you did was you tore everything was perforated and die cut and scored. So the business card was perforated. You could just pull it off and separate it. And you make the roach clip on this piece, and the other piece you just throw away. So every piece of it there was instructions, there was a business card, and there was this origami thing that you put together, and you couldn't help but do it. You're sitting there, what are you doing? You're drinking soda, eating a piece of pizza. You get this thing, and it's like, oh, I got to put this together. Plus, so, pass the joint, put it in there, and you can smoke it. And it was like this little chamber that the smoke would gather in, and you take a hit off the back that had this little die cut hole. It was great.
Do you have an example of that, Ernie, anywhere?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
Yes,
I
I
would
do.
love to
You know
see
what? I'll
it.
send it to you. I'll send it to you along with these images from the show today because in fact, when we had the show at the Smithsonian in Memphis, and the Rock and the Art and Speed show, we had reproduced it and made it again because I have the original die from like 1971, this wooden plywood thing with all this metal, and that's what they used to die cut it and score it. I mean, it's an incredible thing. But yeah, I'll send you a copy of it so that you can post it with when what we're talking about here. So anyway, um, we also knew Eddie Abner, who was the engineer there, and he played steel guitar on this particular Buckwheat album. And when we got together with them, like I said, Andy brought Steve over, and then uh, a week or so later, Steve brought the rest of the band over to Pacific Ioneer, and we got a chance to spend a couple of hours with them. They were waiting to go into studio, and we got a chance to spend some time with them. We showed them some at Pacific Ioneer. All the walls in the art department were decorated, wallpapered with all our work. So it was like walking into a living, portfolio of work. Every time I go out on press, I grab a press sheet and we put it up on the wall and we papered the whole entire art department, which was pretty good size. And so, we got a chance to talk with them and we talked about this album Charade and what does it mean to you? And they wanted, and it was really funny because I was a huge Fellini fan. Okay. And his films were amazing. Juliet of the Spirits, Eight and a Half, an incredible filmmaker, very surrealistic. And especially for the 60s when everything was psychedelic, we drop some acid and go see Juliet of the Spirits. Oh my God, and so they were big fans of Fellini as well. So I said, well, Charade, Buckwheat, let's make you guys look like mannequins. And so they sort of liked the idea, and I did a couple of sketches, and I want to find that image. Here it is here. And so what you see here and you'll be able to see it better when I send you the image and you're able to blow it up. But each one of the members of the band they have elastic bands around their necks and their arms. And I don't know whether you can see it closely here, but the front cover's on the left. It should be on the right because it's a gatefold package. But I wanted to do it this way because we start talking about it here, and then it continues on the back. And the back is a little bit more obvious because when you see this bigger, you'll see the elastic. So they look like mannequins, and it was kind of the surrealistic thing. And as on the back cover over here, there's people reaching in the window. There's people under the couch that they're sitting on. There's pieces of mannequin laying around because like I said, they wanted something very surrealistic. They wanted images of themselves because they were a new band. When they did Hot Tracks, and again, this was one of those bands that used us once, but they continued using the logo. The logo that I had created for them for Buckwheat, they used on the Hot Tracks album, but they did this really weird illustration. It looked like a stack of pancakes that's melting, but they used the logo. But we wanted to use the picture, and they wanted to use the pictures. We talked about it because we had an airbrush illustrator, we had Drew Struzan, we had major people that could do illustration. And they felt everybody was kind of unanimous in that because they were new and nobody really knew of them, it would be more important to show them. So, Charade, you can't really put them in masks like, Mardi Gras. You want to see them. So what do you do that's kind of surrealistic? And you've got all these people in this band. I think there's like five of them, and make it kind of give it this kind of strange look and feel, so that the more you look at it, the more you see in it. And this house was a rental that Scott Inyart had. His family owned it, and the person that lived there let us use it for this shoot because it was kind of perfect. It was kind of like not sure where they are. It doesn't really look like a house. It could be anywhere. And then you've got all these weird things happening out of the windows, here and over here. And like I said, the more you look at it, even the highlights that are on the floor here, next to these legs coming in, that's created by the thing on the back cover. this window that the light came in. I mean, it was we had lighting outside. I mean, it was kind of a more difficult shoot than it looks here. But as again, the more you look at it, like Fellini. I wanted to do a Fellini look because that's what they liked. And if you're into Fellini, you get it. You get the mannequins and them looking like mannequins, and they're in color. The mannequins are all one color, but yet there's humans in there as well. I mean, what's that kid doing on the couch in the back cover? I mean, it's just
I kept thinking it was an illusion. I'm like, is this an illusion? Or no,
yeah,
that
yeah,
looks like a person underneath there.
yeah,
It
yeah.
makes you
And
really look closely.
yes, and the same thing happens in these windows. You don't see it right away, but on both these windows, there's people reaching in and stuff. So it's like this still off of a Fellini film where it's not really exactly sure exactly where they are, what they're doing, what's going on. And I mean, with a name like Buckwheat, I mean, it sounds southern, sounds like a country thing, but yet they're in this not a country environment. They're in a city kind of environment, in a house. I mean, but I wanted it to be kind of nondescript, but yet have some charm to it. And I think that, we were able to do that here. And then, like I said, this was a gatefold album. And I want to get to the, let's see, how do I do this? Oh, yeah, here we go. Sorry about this because
No,
it's
that's fine. You're doing
yeah.
great.
Well, it's a new computer, and I'm trying to, and it's like, I guess anything else that's new, once you get used to it, things go a lot easier. I was really used to the old one, and now I've got this new one that kind of is different. And so when you opened up the album, uh, you really didn't. I mean, this was one of those kind of albums that really could have been a front and a back and a sleeve, but they had the ability to, because there were a lot of people that really liked them and their music was really good. So they really thought, and Southern rock was really coming in. So they really thought this was going to be a real slam dunk for these guys. And they're all talented. This was the inside.
I like that.
Yeah, again, it's Fellini. Yes, you think you're going to get more information than you had on the front and back cover, but now it's in negative, and now it's kind of creepy. And then there's some song titles, very little copy on the inside, and very little copy on the back cover. I mean, that was one of those things where people wanted to be kind of different, kind of secretive, kind of mysterious, and by making it a negative on the inside. So when you're opening it up, you're on the color and stuff on the outside. You open it up, you're expecting to see again, and we talked about this before. You should give them the unexpected. They're expecting to see more stuff in color. They're expecting to get more information, and they got this negative, which is kind of creepy, and so it all kind of seemed to flow at the time when we did it, and they really loved it. And I wish we would have been able to do the second album, but I don't know, like we said before, a lot of bands will come back. I mean, everybody loved the cover. Everybody thought it was great, including Andy. All the people, Bill Levy loved it, London loved it. But again, I guess they chose to do something else. The Hot Tracks album, which was their second and only two of these albums were done by them. And they went off and did other stuff. I mean, but I guess Steve spent some time out in California and formed the band out here. And then he ended up, I think, going back to Kentucky, doing some stuff with his two brothers and a sister that were also musicians. And, still, I guess, is still doing stuff. He was very talented, really nice guy, really loved the work. They all loved the work. People loved walking. It was like a museum in a way because we had all this stuff all over the walls. It was like a gallery. And, they'd be looking at one cover and they go over here, here's another cover, and there's no empty space. It's just like all over the place. And we painted the floor in the art department silver. So it was like this crazy kind of place. And there was always rock music blasting or comedy. And we were always partying. It was great. It was a great environment. And it was really great because they felt at home. And I guess that's the biggest thing because we were different. Pacific Pioneer was different. We weren't like an office. I mean, we were in the crossroads of the world. Our building was the shoot for Muscle of Love. It looked like something from India, and you walk into that, and there's a very straight receptionist and stuff. And you go to the left into the art department. There's a door, and you walk into this crazy environment with all these crazy people and stuff everywhere, including the ceiling. So you were in this box with a silver floor and artwork everywhere. So, but it was a lot of fun. And again, it goes back to our relationships. We really tried to build those relationships with the musicians, with the producers. Bones and Bob Ezrin and Joe Wizard, those guys were really influential with helping us get acts because acts were always after them to produce, and when they're if they don't already have somebody that they're married to, it seemed like these guys like Shep Gordon were always willing to put our name in there. And then whenever I planted a roach clip business card here and there, that always helped too.
The biggest regret I have, first of all, the design. I love it. It's so striking. And the sad part is I had a chance to listen to a little bit of the music and loved what I heard. And it's a shame they were not bigger or more known.
Yeah, I mean, but again, that happens everywhere. It happens to a lot of bands because of it's like category. It's like actors. There's only one Brad Pitt. There's only one George Clooney. And then there's some B-real ones that kind of look like them or kind of sound like them. And we constantly are looking for the new. It happens everywhere in any new industry. You're always looking. Once you get in there and you sample what you have, you're looking for something more. You're looking for something new. There are, I call them infectors. There are people that discover stuff and get out there and infect everybody else. And now, when everybody's into it, they move on to the next thing. They discover stuff, and you need them. You need them because it may be something that, especially today, record stores were great because you could go there and there was something physical.
Hmm.
You experienced it. Kids today, they don't know what a record store is. They go online. It's too much trouble. I never have to leave my house. I just go online, order whatever I want. They bring it to me free. I mean, you can't beat that. So I think that a big part of the charm of music was the record stores. It was your library. It was a personal library that you didn't, it was like having the Dewey Decimal Code to exactly what you want music. And you go into this place and there it is everywhere, all kinds, every genre, different languages. It was just an amazing experience that you just don't get that today because you could pick it up and feel it and turn it over and look at it and sit it back in there. And you can't do that now. I mean, you can find it and you can see the front and the back and the inside, but you can't touch it. So it's really, the internet is such a wonderful thing, but it really takes away, all you have is sight and maneuverability. You don't get smell, you don't get taste, you don't get feel really. So you're missing out. We're missing out. It's like abbreviating stuff. Now we've abbreviated the music experience from having, this tactical kind of emotional connection to being on a screen.
And I think the biggest thrill when going into the record store was just going through all of those bins. You never knew what you were going to discover. And it's really a shame that I think we could have had the best of both worlds. I know vinyl is making a resurgence,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. And a
Right.
group like Buckwheat, the internet, I think, would have helped them to, when it came to the promotion or having them on MTV so people could
Yeah.
see them, but then keeping the vinyl as well. I think
Yeah.
that that those two worlds they can exist together. I truly believe that.
Well,
And that's why I'm so glad we're doing this.
well, like you said, vinyl is having a resurgence. And what's happening is I met with a gentleman a couple of weeks ago who has a program that musicians sign into, and they make more money than they get from Amazon or YouTube or any of these other platforms that play their music. Because, you have to have tens of thousands of listens before you start making a third of a cent because everybody else is making them. Amazon, everybody's making money but the creator. So he's come up with this program that they sign into, and I don't understand it, but he explained it to me, showed me the PowerPoint of it. It's incredible. And he's already signing musicians up left and right because it's all about airplay. Whether it's on the internet or radio, they don't really get the kind of residuals, especially online. When it's on the internet, they very rarely make any money. Everybody else is making the money. So he's figured out a way to make them more money. And it's kind of interesting how he's doing it. And he said because part of the glamour of what they want with what he has is you can't own music today. You can own, they give it to you, and he explained to me you can't own it, but when you go to this thing, you can own it, and vinyl is important because you can own it. It's there. You're not restricted by usage and listening and all the rest of it. Very complicated, but it's a different time. It's a different world. This group, I think, really had a shot, like you said, but it was just timing. They were too many other power bands that came along that were into that same kind of, I think they kind of ran into the same problem that Black Oak had. The good thing about Black Oak is they were really different. They had Jim was all over that stage. These guys were not much like that. I mean, they weren't, and Black Oak carved a name for in a genre for themselves. And these guys got lost in the shuffle with all the other ones, sounding like Little Feat a lot. People compared them a lot with Little Feat.
I
So,
was doing some research because you got me going, and I believe Michael Smotherman, who is
yeah,
part of the band, actually quite a songwriter. He was kind of like what Greg Diamond was with $5 Shoes, even
yeah,
though the band, he didn't get the accolades, or the notoriety from the band. Michael wrote lots of songs and was
yeah,
did a lot of work with Captain Beefheart and his Magic
yeah,
Band. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, that's it. I'm seeing a lot of these players. They're making their mark in other ways, or
yeah.
Michael's no longer with us, sadly.
Right, right. Well, it's like we were talking about with Steve Lindell. I mean, he did the same thing. He touched this for 2 albums, and he went off, went to back to Kentucky, got with his two brothers and sister, and had this whole other career, and did a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff. But came together with this one band. I mean, that's what happens sometimes. That Pacific Pioneer was a lot like that. When we were from 1972 when we started to about 1976, for between 5 and 6 years, we were stronger than ever before. I mean, it was just mind blowing. It was like being in a rock band that was like U2 or the Beatles or something. It was just amazing. And then, it all changed. And luckily, and I've said this before, we've talked about it. Luckily, we were into the corporate world as well. That saved us because the music industry dried up. It's just like bands, I mean, thank God they have casinos and stuff now that they can come back and all this resurgence of their music, and it helps with record sales and all the rest of it. And they make their money on touring. That's where all these guys make their money on touring. The casinos are a great place for that. And for me and what I do, my casino is the internet. My casino is social media. People reach out to me, want work done, or talk about the stuff that I've done, or buy prints, or buy artwork. It's become my casino in a crazy kind of way. Even though I'm not a gambler, I mean, not a gambler with money. I gamble with my time and my knowledge. I never put money. The most money I ever put into any company was Pacific, and I had 4 companies, Pacific Pioneer, and I put $2,500 in. And that's how we started. My partner Tony put in 20, and our third partner Lou put in 2,500. So we started that, and thank God for Ivy Hill. There's always somebody or something that comes along that changes your world. And
Yes.
Ivy Hill was one of those for Pacific Pioneer. They hated Craig and they loved us. And, my job was to design album covers that could be printed on board. So,
Well, you know what, Ernie, having heard the music of Buckwheat a little bit, I'm going to have you do the mind meld. Is there any particular choice that you would like me to
well,
feature from Charade?
there's there's Ike Turner's Joe Better Get Step In.
Oh,
Did it
okay.
cover it? Yeah, okay. But for me, the grand slam is Hey Little Girl.
Oh my heavens, that was my
That's
choice.
it. Oh, great. Well,
Yes.
we're in the new year and we're still doing the mind meld. It's great. Even
Yeah.
better.
We're kindred spirits for
Yeah.
sure. When I heard that song, I'm like,
Yeah.
I like this. I should have, it really should have been, very big on the FM stations as early FM.
Yeah. Well, and record companies, they're going to put their money where they know that they can make money. New groups like this, I mean, and sometimes they don't have the person in-house that has the right ear, to put say, hey, let's put money behind these guys because this could be really good. It happened a lot, and I think that they were again like some of these other bands that we talked, Stahaley Brothers, some of the
Yes.
bands that we talked about, the Mob, Smith Perkins Smith. They
Sarah,
yeah, yeah, it goes on and on. One
that
was
was a great example.
yeah,
Well,
I
Ernie,
know.
see what we're doing with Ernie's Corner and the Block Party. We
And
are
your
giving,
knowledge and your
oh,
knowledge.
your knowledge too, my friend.
Listen, this what we do together would nowhere near be as interesting as it is with having you do this with me because and we've talked about this, you connect, you lay out the dots. I mean, I may lay out dots and you add dots where they're missing and then you connect them all because you have that knowledge, you have that uh, understanding of music and as a professional as you are, it really adds a great piece to what we do on Ernie's Corner. The whole block is awesome. I'm glad to just have a corner, and I'm very comfortable. I may do some renovation here. I may try
Hey,
to expand the corner.
it's going to look good, Ernie. It's going to
Yeah,
look
yeah.
good.
Thanks.
Peace out, my friend.
You
This was a
too.
great segment as always.
Thank you, Joyce. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week, everybody.